Hello, everyone. I'm Keith DeStone, and I'm here with Greg Nagy and Sarah and Janet and Aileen for HeroesX office hours for v15 of HeroesX. And today we're going to discuss the questions or the responses to the questions that Greg posed for hours 3 and for hour 4. Hour 3 question is, how is Andromache like Cleopatra? How is she not like Cleopatra? Deceptively simple.
Deceptively.
So what are folks saying about this one?
Yes, one participant, and I'm quoting, is saying, the difference I was most struck by was that Cleopatra's lament was successful in its aim, but Andromache's was not. And the participant is exploring the possible answer to be found in the meaning of the names.
Very clever, very clever. Well, except that Andromache seems to be what I would call an Amazon name. So the name would suggest that whatever idea is behind the name, if it's really a personification, is very positive. And it has to do with a set of myths that when I was young, were considered to be relatively newer and not so old, which is the myths about women warriors. But I think, and I'm quite convinced now, that myths about Amazons are very old. And Andromache has Amazon characteristics. So the problem about why her lament is not successful is that Hector dies, but that's not her fault. In other words, she is a superb lament artist. And I would say, since she is quoted directly 3 times, whereas Cleopatra is not quoted once, she is only paraphrased, makes me think that from the Homeric point of view, Andromache is much more successful than Cleopatra, even though her husband at the time dies, and whereas Cleopatra's husband at this point does not die, but he certainly will later. I love the question. I just love it.
One of the participants mentioned that Andromache is a real person, Cleopatra is a trope. Andromache has more lines. When we are close reading, is it a good idea to say this is real, this is not real?
Well, what I would say to this wonderful participant is that everything is quote unquote real from the point of view of the tradition and the, I don't like to say audience. I never want to say audience, but here I am saying audience. Let's say the group that this medium is for. As far as this group is concerned, everybody is real. Everybody. And what people say, whether the gods will cooperate with their wishes or not cooperate, does not affect how important they are or how central they are to the overall telling of the tale. I'm trying not to say story because story is so bleached. That English word is so bleached. When you hear story in some contexts, you say, "Oh, it's just a story." Well, I'd like to think of story the way a serious journalist would say, "I'm going to get that story right." So I can't emphasize enough that the medium we're studying thinks very highly of itself, and every part of it, every syllable, is for the record, for the recording of absolute moral values in the cosmos, whether the characters fail or don't fail. I'm so enjoying these reactions. They're extremely incisive, and even when I disagree with what the questioner is aiming at, I still very much appreciate the question itself.
Well, one thing I would say is that all the people who've been answering haven't given just a simple answer. They've been exploring and developing thoughts and ideas. So, we're just distilling a little part of it. So one of them has been talking about the difference between epic and lament, different genres of song making, but within the one within the other, and
Right.
and looking at also not only the names, but thinking about Achilles. He gets a Kleos, but his name has a name that seems to be related to lament. There's a whole load of argumentation here. So I wondered if you could talk a little bit more about that relationship between, say, the women trying to take agency through lament, except it's not agency so much as it might or might not influence the hero they're lamenting to, but how its role fits in.
Yes, and I think one way that might be novel for us to think about what's happening in the plot. And by plot, I simply mean storyline. And again, I take story very seriously. So one thing about the storyline, sometimes called the plot, that I think is very important. By the way, the French have this wonderful word for it, trame, which is a term of weaving. And I love the fact that trame gives you an idea of the way the web is woven and the direction of the weaving. But here it comes. When I was much younger, I used to talk about epic as a genre, and that is to say, as a form of verbal art with its own rules. And then whatever is embedded within epic, such as laments, as a sub-genre. I learned from Richard P. Martin and his brilliant 1989 book, The Language of Heroes, that it's probably better to say it differently. Now, I prefer to say that epic is a super genre, and that whatever is embedded in it is still very much a genre that's recognizable as a genre. So, for example, in the case of lament, okay, it's not sung the way a woman would sing a lament. It's recitative, so to speak. It is in dactylic hexameter, which is the special rhythmical format for epic, this supergenre. Okay, but morphologically, if you analyze a prayer or a lament or any of those things that anthropologists would consider folk genre, and I mean folk again very seriously, then I would say it's an amazing medium where a whole variety of genre are very clearly represented, even though the overall frame is a frame of its own, which we call epic, and which I'm now describing as super genre. I don't know if that helps, but that gives you a way of accommodating all the beautiful rules and sub-rules that are happening in this medium. It's a very systematic medium. To me, it's so organic that everything fits.
Well, let's go to hour 4.
I hate to leave hour 3.
I hate to leave too.
Yeah, but
feels
let's
so
do it.
abrupt. But let's see. The hour 4 question is as follows. If you have developed a liking for Achilles as you read more and more of the Iliad, what new thing would you still need to see if you wanted to like him even more? Alternatively, if you have developed a dislike for him, would there be any new thing about him that could possibly turn you around so that you would actually start to like him?
Maybe some people will never like him.
Okay, yes. One participant admits that what helped him to find Achilles more and more enjoyable is in the embassy scene. Achilles has shown to be very eloquent.
Oh,
And yes, and the participant is enjoying this part in Iliad 9.
bravo. May I turn again to this beautiful book by Richard P. Martin, The Language of Heroes, 1989, which is available without fees, for free, on the website of the Center for Hellenic Studies. He has, I think, demonstrated so clearly that Achilles is a virtuoso in speaking that is comparable to his virtuosity in doing battle, in being a warrior. He is very good at it, and I love to illustrate this with my hands, and I'm going to use the criteria of Albert Lord, who talks about how in oral poetics there is virtuosity in compression as well as expansion. So my favorite example, we're not there yet, but in the Odyssey, Rhapsody 8, there is a paraphrase of an epic that is just 10 verses long. Whereas, of course, our Iliad is 15,000 plus verses long. That's a very stark example of compression and expansion. Now, let's take a typical speech as quoted by this amazing medium, this super genre that is represented by the Iliad. Let's say Agamemnon is the speaker. As Richard Martin has proved, if Agamemnon is making a point that is in 3 parts, A, B, and C, and I'm going to try to illustrate this on the screen. Here's A, here's B, and here is C. Sure, A is the smallest, B is middle size, and C is the biggest. If you asked Achilles to say the same sort of thing, here's what he can do. A, it's just a sliver. B, just a sliver. And then C, like this. In other words, he's a master of compression and expansion. And you see that in Iliad 9, as Richard Martin shows in his book. You see it all over the place. And here's the big takeaway. If you compare Homer, and it's not that I believe in a single person at a single time, at a single place, a genius called Homer, but let's say the culture hero who represents the evolution of this amazing medium. If you compare Homer with other poets, then Homer would be like Achilles, because Homer, quote unquote, can be a virtuoso compressor and a virtuoso expander. We all notice the expansion, because who won't notice that it's 15,000 plus verses? But the compression is harder to recognize. But there are many, many instances of it in Iliad 9. And so I congratulate our participant in noticing the virtuosity of Achilles. Okay, you may still not like him, but you must admire him.
About the dislike, a participant said, I initially disliked him, but with the embassy scene and seeing this warrior as a potential husband, change his or her mind.
Yes, I love that, because frankly, when we hear Achilles talking about Briseis, the captive woman, you're thinking of him as a very uncaring, unfeeling, just unemotional person who's just caring about the honor that he has lost, and how this woman is a function of whether he has more or less honor given to him by his community. By the time you get to 9, you see a sea change. You see Achilles as a potential lover. Okay, maybe not enough of that. And there were other traditions that showed his sensitivity a lot more. In our Iliad, it's the job of Patroclus to show the kinder, gentler Achilles, including how Achilles can be kinder and gentler with women, for example. But you still see it. And I love the way Achilles says, why am I here? Why am I fighting and risking my life at Troy? And it's for the sake of the honor of a man who lost his wife. And is it only the sons of Atreus, that is to say, Menelaus and Agamemnon, who love their wives? What about me? And he says it in a very compressed way. I love Briseis. I wish he said more. He says it in a very compressed way. But in a sense, the compression itself is a masterpiece. For the song culture understands that there's a kinder, gentler Achilles. And this is a very quick flash recognition of that sensitivity side that otherwise we don't see so much. But there it is. And again, I don't demand of my wonderful fellow readers that they like Achilles. All I'm asking them, and I'm asking of myself, is to appreciate how much the song culture probably not only likes him, but loves him.
Picking up on the part of your question about what more would you like to see, one of the participants has said, you know, they've got the admiration, they've also got a dislike, they keep changing their minds, it's changing as they reread. But one of the things they would like to see more of would be some of the song culture that hasn't survived outside of the Iliad. For example, the Kypria and the Aethiopis, and other traditions. We've got this Pan-Hellenic version that's come down to us, but how would the quote-unquote Homeric audience, but let's say the Homeric rhapsodes and in different locations, in different traditions, they would love to see more of that. Do we have any clues or hints about that, and what other Achilles versions there are or were?
Yes, and I would say Exhibit A would be Sappho. And to me,
right. So we're going to get some of that in the upcoming hours. So we're perhaps giving some spoilers here.
It's a good spoiler, because when we finally get to Sappho, when I start discussing the poetics of Sappho, this woman poet. Let's call her this woman poet. It's more complicated, but let's say it that way. The big tragedy is that we have only fragments of this amazing tradition surviving to our day. And in my later years, I've spent eternities trying to reconstruct what we have lost. But we still have enough. And I think that, for example, Sappho Song 44, Fragment 44, which is about the wedding of Hector and Andromache, if we had the complete version of that and not just a chunk of it, a fragmented chunk, I think we would see the sensitivity of male heroes much more clearly. In a way, our best shot is how Hector reacts to the lament of Andromache in Iliad 6. Because in a sense, he takes the raw material of the lament that this virtuoso singer, Andromache, has performed, and there'll be two more coming up, one in Rhapsody 22 and another in Rhapsody 24. In a sense, it's a male channeling of that, in the way Hector responds, which is almost like an audience reaction to lament. And we'd have a lot more of that if we had more Sappho fragments.
So can we use some of the other heroes within the Iliad to gain perspectives on Achilles himself, do you think?
Yes, and I think the best one is Hector, even though Achilles hates him more than anybody else in all of humanity, and he has good reason to. But in a sense, Hector is our best bet. And after all, Hector dies wearing the armor of Achilles. He is sealed within the first set of armor before it has to be replaced by a second set of armor, which is the Iliadic armature. I'm playing with words.
Well, I wish we had more of those traditions, certainly. And I wish we had
Yes.
more time, but
Yes.
we have to call it for today, I think. But we'll be back for more for hours 5 and 6.
And encourage the participants. What incisive reading, and thank you so much, Sam, Janet, and Hélène, for channeling our wonderful participants and readers. And let's cheer for them and encourage them not to give up, because it's not easy, but it's so worth the effort to read as carefully as they are doing.